yes, he has great talent. Girls going to go play track and field at Louisville, and some basketball recruits and everything else on this team. But in 2 seasons they won a district, and I don't know how far they went last year, and then ended up to a Final Four that they ended up not getting to play this year.
And they have a lot coming back last year. They have a lot coming back too.
Yeah.
So.
They do. They've got tons of talent coming back, and it's Notre Dame. It's a Class 4 large school, so people to pick from, sure, but they still got to come together and play as a team, and that comes to coaching. So I like what he's doing up there. Kind of the same story. Now this one here, and I don't even know if this is his first job as a coach or not. I know him, but I don't know his story as far as getting into coaching. I was impressed this season with Adam Stevens out at Woodland. Took over the girls program for the first time out there. In the past, covering Saxony, they've been in the same district for the last 3 years. Played at the holiday tournament, ran into each other regular season, this, that, and the other. Woodland always had some decent players, but they never really believed that they could win games, just to put it simply. Their mindset was completely, 180 this year. The first time I saw them play, I was like, this team believes they can win. And they played better. They played together. They played harder. They played tougher. They were after the ball. They were, just intangible things that I'd never seen a Woodland Cardinal team do before. Not to knock whoever was on the team before, coach or whatever, but the mindset was completely different this year. And it started with Adam. I played slow pitch softball with him in a church league up here at Shawnee Park for off and on a couple of seasons. Just a competitor type of guy that really gets out there and gets after it. So I thought, well, maybe that's got, something to do with it. Somebody that I don't know anything about other than Saxony's played him the last 3 years. That's out at Neelyville, but she's been there like 18 or 19 years. Becky Hale.
Yes. She's a great
been out there a long time. Go out to their gym and look at, and like you said, look at the banners on the wall in their gym over the last 17, 18 seasons. She's got a girl that graduated from her playing for Murray State right now. The Dodd girls at Three Rivers now. Like I said, they're a tough team.
Toby is a big fan of Gentry Worley.
Oh yeah,
she's a good player.
I was until she went to Murray, but that's just me.
Hey, and she went over there. She actually got some time as a freshman.
She did. Whenever they came here, she was in a walking boot because I went to the Murray game here, so she got hurt somewhere along the line. But she was getting playing time because I looked her up before they came here. But she was a stud player. She put up like 35 against Saxony one game I called, something like that. It was just crazy.
Her senior year over at the Christmas tournament at Twin Rivers, my first year coaching New Magic girls, I think she ended up with 25, 26, something like that on us. And we didn't score the first quarter. I think we come out a little shell-shocked. They had just won state the year before. They're good. And we started, fighting and competing throughout the game. And I can remember a point in the second half where we started building a little confidence. I think got it to about 11. And our girls were like, dang, she can't go left. Make her go left. Make her go left. So one time one of our girls says this, and she just kind of looked at all of us like, are y'all dumb? And she took off and went left and done one of those things that good players do and probably scored on us. But she is, in 2 years of coaching girls, she's probably the best one we've seen.
Oh, yeah. Just you want to talk about far and away, head and shoulders above anybody else in the gym. Just give her the ball and watch her go.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I think Becky Hale, that's a great pick on your part, and I'll go in the middle here, Tobin, and you jump on the other side of me. But if I was going to pick one, and I'll be honest, being biased, this is a guy who I've known since I was a kid. We grew up about the same age. He's a little bit older than me. I like to remind him of that. But that's Joe Shoemaker at Orion.
Oh, no doubt.
That's probably cheating because Joe has got a state title and been in some Final Fours and everything else, but. If you go back, when I first started coaching at Bell City, Joe was at Advance, and he was Jim Hall's assistant coach, and then he took over as the head coach, and he actually made a Final Four run at Advance. Mm-hmm. Now I know he's made, I believe it's 3 at Orion, got him a state title. He just came within an eyelash of winning the second one, but, I tell Joe every time I see him, I just think he does an awesome job, and he's a guy who, when he first started, and this is not me patting myself on the back at all, but I came out of the gate and won a lot real early. Joe had success early, but, not the Final Four runs and things like that. But as you looked at his career, the way that he's built it as he's gone along, just the consistency that he's had as a coach. And look at their, I don't know if you guys saw Orion play this year or not, but even their JV, they've got like 18, 20 kids on the JV. Their junior high kids coming up are really good. I mean, they're going to keep being good.
And that's what I was going to say. I mean, look at the numbers that a little 2A school is putting on the bench. They had to bring extra chairs out to give them enough seats for the JV game. I mean, when you've got that many kids coming out to play, you're doing something right as not only a coach, but just as a program as a whole.
Well, I think that's something we got to talk about with good coaches too, is just programs and consistency. And we were talking about this earlier. Just building kind of a pipeline or a feeder system within your program to establish that type of consistency as kids are getting older.
Yeah, that's one thing that I was fortunate. I grew up at Scott County Central. I had Larry Mosley, another guy who I could have a whole podcast about. Larry was our youth league coach there at Scott Central and married to Daisy Porter of the Porter family, which is Otto's senior sister. And, so he's tied into all the Porter group. But Larry coached at Scott County Elementary basketball for 30 years. And there's no way I would be sitting here talking to you guys or doing what I'm doing today without Larry Mosley being in my life. And you just look at the domino effect of, now Toby's a coach, and I coached Dom Johnson and he's a coach, and I coached this kid and he's a physical therapist, whatever. And I'm not taking all the credit for that, but it's amazing to look at just the influence that one guy had on so many people, and then the impact that those people have had on people. And, so the people like that behind the scenes, and how these programs like Charleston is famous for having the Lincoln Center, which is where everybody goes to play after school or going to the park. And they had their own group of families like the Frasers and whatnot at Charleston, the Biles and those kids that came through there, where Scott County had the Timmons and the Porters and those kids that came through there. Families are a little bit different now. They're not as big as they used to be. You don't see the family with 8, 9, 10 kids in it the way that you did maybe 20 or 30 years ago. But, Toby, to your point, the feeder system, and if I could put on my superintendent hat here for just a minute, that's one thing I'd like to try to create here at Delta at my own school, is a feeder program for that, not just for basketball, but just ways to get kids involved in things when they're little. We're going to try to start a robotics club. We're going to try to do something with our feeder program with our basketball. We're doing some things with youth coding, all kinds of things just to get kids involved, because it's harder and harder to do that. If you look across the country at youth participation in sports and just the number of people that go to church and all kinds of things like that, I think schools have to take on a bigger role in what they're doing now. And so that's one thing that we're going to try to do here at Delta that maybe will help us kind of, put our better foot forward as some of these great coaches are retiring. Somebody is going to emerge as the dominant program in this area, and then the consistent winners in this area, and we certainly want to be one of those. And so I'll say one more coach here, Toby, and I'll let you go, but I want to plug my own guy, Chris Hahn, our boys coach. And I think Chris is a great example, and I'm saying this not knocking anything about his former school, but when a guy gets a little bit of talent, maybe he's been a good coach this whole time, and he just needed the right opportunity, the right set of circumstances. I know when he came here to Delta, we are basketball from the first day of school to the last day of school. You can play as much as you want because these kids want to play. I mean, if you give Eric Berry a key to the gym, we'd have $1 million electric bill because the lights would be on all the time. I mean, like, these kids want to play every single day. And so when Chris got here to coach a group like that really wanted to play, and again, I'm not knocking his last team, but whenever he got here with this group of kids that were ready to win, how do you know a guy like that? How do you know there's not a Chris Hahn out there somewhere just waiting on the right job,
This guy got the right chance.
He got the right opportunity. And so, Toby, I'll let you jump in there. I mean, I think Joe is one of the best coaches in this part of the state. I'd put him up against anybody. And then I think, a guy like Chris, if he'll stick around and we like having him here at Delta and he'll just stay here and keep doing what he's doing, who knows, in 5 years you might look up and say, man, look at that guy's resume,
Absolutely. Well, I think first, just to your point there, you got to kind of establish what's a good coach. And I think just the way the world is now, because we can all look on TV and see that college coaches are getting let go left and right, NBA coaches are getting let go left and right. The world's just so much smaller to where used to you just knew what was going on in your town and maybe the town over. But now we know every town in the state and even the state over. So expectations are a little bit different of coaches. They don't really get that chance sometimes to stick around and establish their program and let it develop the way they want to. But to me, a good coach obviously has to know the game. But the most important things are, do they put the time in? Do they care about their players? Can they get their kids to play hard? And are they organized? When you go watch them play, do they look like a basketball team? Which is a silly thing, but do they pass the eye test? And to me, I think we still got a lot of good coaches in the area, and I just kind of listed a whole bunch of them that came to mind when we talked about this earlier, and put them in two categories. One was the been in one place for a while category, which this is, like we talked about with consistency and guys getting into administration or being a trainer or just leaving the profession altogether. There's not a lot of these people, but the first one that I thought of was a guy like a Joe Shoemaker. He's actually in this list, but you talked about him enough. My very first one was Brandon Blankenship.
Love Brandon. We love Brandon.
He's also an administrator, which makes it even more impressive what he does.
Brandon is a heck of a coach. He is a heck of a coach.
Enrollment of like 50 kids. Some classes they've only got 3 or 4 boys in the whole class. But it's what we talked about, consistency. He's been there a long time. He's established his program. They've got a feeder system. Them kids start off young playing a certain way. They can dribble, pass, and shoot, which sounds like, well, of course, they're basketball players, but they
a lot of teams can't.
Pressure.
That's right.
And another simple thing, when they get the ball, they know what way they're supposed to go. And when the other team gets the ball, they know where they're supposed to go. And that's what I mean about being organized. Just do they look like they know how to play ball? And all Brandon Blankenship teams do. I think he's a great, great coach. And some other guys that have just been in one place for a while that have won a lot, or maybe their records aren't great. A couple guys I'm going to mention, their records aren't always great, but you got to look at who they're playing all the time too. Obviously, Chad Allen, with what he did with the girls program at Dexter, did a great, great job. Won a ton of games. Did a good job with the boys this year. Darren Scott at Jackson, I think, is one of the better coaches in the area. Been at one place for a long time, won a lot of districts. Same with Drew Church. And those are 2 guys, and Will Durden at Poplar Bluff, 3 guys right there, all female conference. So they kind of beat up on each other throughout the year.
Man, let me pause you right there, Toby,
Go ahead.
and jump in and say something about Drew. That's another guy that you mentioned who, I remember when Drew got hired at Cape, and, they were coming off of Derek McCord. And, Matt,
yeah.
I don't know if you're old enough to remember when Derek was at Scott City and all those things, but, Derek was a great coach in this area.
Yeah.
And he went there to Cape Central, and after Derek left Cape, it was kind of like, not to say Drew was a letdown or anything, but Drew went for several years there where, they were doing okay, but it wasn't where they're at now.
Right.
And to your point, Toby, Drew has built a great program over a lot of years where his administration stuck with him and gave him a chance. And
exactly.
And I tell you what, man, they're as good as anybody now. And so, I mean, Drew does a great job. Go ahead there, Matt.
Yeah, well, Drew's dad, funny, actually taught me in a nonsense university studies PE class over at SEMO. I didn't know him from anybody, but he's also assistant on his staff, and I recognized him at the Christmas tournament, and I thought, well, that's that guy, and I put it all together then. And he was a coach for a long time, and I don't know where.
He was over in Illinois. Yeah,
okay.
He was in Illinois. He was a legendary coach over there.
Yeah, I knew he had talked about it some there in that class, and so, I mean, Drew comes from, grew up coach's son or whatever, so it's no surprise then that, once he got in there and got going, that he's had the success he has.
That's right. Yep. So, Toby, go ahead. What's your list
just on
like?
those 3 guys, again, they beat up on each other all year long and faced a tough conference, female conference, and play a good schedule. So I think you can't just look at a record. If a team's 12-12 going into districts, 500 isn't always a bad thing. You need to look at who they're playing. And kind of like we talked about Becky Hell earlier. You look at their schedule, my gosh.
Becky Hale will
there's
play
not
anybody.
An easy game on there.
No.
They'll play anybody. So I think we get spoiled by like the Hall of Famers like a Greg Hollifield, who I'm leaving off this list because he is a Hall of Famer. Everybody knows he's great. Where at Sykeston they'll win 20 games every year, and they also play female conference, and they also play a tough schedule. but I mean, it's just different.